going to approach this? Now, to me, it is simple. As business people, this is the time to wake up if we did not wake up earlier. This is the time to cooperate more in every other sector where we did not cooperate, because we are going to face a much larger market now. We have to supply the needs of that market, and we have to expect to compete. So where are we exactly? When you talk of East African Business Council, I drove it for a year, Chairman Mosha drove it for a year. But to some people, lots of our business community, by the way, even in the public sector, they don't actually give it the value it deserves. To an extent, people would think, what's the role of the private sector, or rather East African Business Council? What's the value addition? What will it add to my work? These are the things we have met. Now today, it's about time now we realize clearly the public sector has gone ahead of us. The political signatures that we saw the other day, I call them political signatures, those have done their part. What are we going to do? Now the challenge in our part today is to see how to input into operationalization of trade within the free trade area. How are we going to position ourselves as East African bloc? The Business Council, fortunately, very fortunately, and everybody alluded to this, we are the best and most organized trade bloc on the continent. For those of you who didn't know, but I'm sure everybody knows. SADC is an arrangement that tends to trade in its own, with South Africa dominating the market. The one reason I'm sure they were a little hesitant to sign was they tend to flood the market down south with all their goods. And so initially, remember, there was a bit of contention as to whether they sign or not. Northern Africa doesn't have an organized business council. You know, it doesn't exist. You know, we've done. ECOWAS, in the engagements I had 3 days ago when what was going on in Kigali, I found ECOWAS is trading with each other 5%. East African community, we are at about 63, between 63 and 64% on different aspects of the trading that we do. So clearly, we are most ahead. Therefore, the messages picked from the public sector is clear. Let us take the lead. Let us take the lead, dear comrades in the private sector. We must position ourselves now, and not tomorrow. Today, tomorrow onwards. We must position ourselves as the champions of the African free trade area, because how are we going, beyond the signature, what are we going to do? How do we get to our goods move across? How we address the trade barriers? How do we, if I meet a barrier in Mauritania moving down with my goods, who do I tell? There are issues of a secretariat that were discussed at the forum the other day, that the AFTA must have a secretariat somewhere. Because is it going to be an organ positioned in the commission in Addis? Or we would like to see a secretariat, specific secretariat of the continental free trade area, positioned somewhere, and we give them a yardstick, we give them a scorecard, we give them timelines of implementing what we need. The challenge is now on us, and if we don't wake up to this call, let me tell you, we will see other continents positioning themselves in Africa as the private sector of Africa and doing much more than those of us who are already here. So, comrades, ladies, gentlemen, let us position ourselves to take advantage of what has come our way. I know we have had a few challenges in the region. We talked of opening airspace, and debate was hot. I'm sure I was sitting in the same room with the Honorable Adan here, when we could not agree on freeing airspace for East African community. Imagine we're still disagreeing on that one. How are we going now to handle the larger situation? Because now the space for Africa, from what I asked, immediately, airspace in Africa should be open to everybody. So the debate, therefore, that whether I should fly from here to Kampala or Kampala to Arusha is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. So now we need to look at how do I fly from here to Abuja. Let me comment a little bit on what you saw as an abstention from Nigeria the other day. I don't know if my fellow business people have understood why Nigeria held back that day. It's not just the manufacturers. It is the fear of what we will bring to the market. Clearly, you know the Nigerian airlines in general. The fear is, if you take Kenya Airways or Rwanda Air today, that lands on better tires, that has better braking systems, they are worried this is going to take the market. This is the fear. The substandard, we kept talking about standards, the substandard levels of steel, every manufactured goods. Now there is a worry that if we open the market, we're going to be flooded by properly tested items from countries that adhere to standards. So that's the fear. But then we can't live with that fear around us. We have to overcome it. So now my call to you as business people is, where can we then now move to the political leadership? Can we ask the chair, and I'm glad everybody's here, the Prime Minister is here of Uganda. I'm glad we can all convene the message to the chair, the current chair. We are lucky we have the chair in East Africa. That beyond this, we have a gathering as the private sector, entire private sector of the region. We clearly define what we want, how we want to input into what is coming. There's talk of the secretariat, I said, but shall we individually deal with the secretariat? Can it work that way? Do we not therefore need to strengthen the business council of the region so that we go as the voice of the region, speaks the secretariat, and therefore the secretariat asks the continent what we want, when we want it, and be able to measure it. Because otherwise, if we don't do this, we'll have these signatures. The year of the current, today we have the chair in East Africa, somebody else will come, and things will go past, and we want to trade beyond the continent. Let me ask you, the trade facilitation agreements, who is going to do them? Who is going to engage? So my thinking is we need to redefine ourselves now as the East African Business Council. The slow membership that we saw, no indication of whether we want to be there or not. I do not think individual corporates or individual business people are going to, present their challenges individually to go to Addis Ababa or wherever the secretariat will be and present your problem. It will not work for sure. And I don't think EAC is handling other things, the political secretariat. So we need to strengthen business council. Fortunately, we are the lead business bloc on the continent. We therefore need to take the mantle now. It is new timing for us, and if we don't, let me tell you, if we don't do it now, time will not wait for us. You can only be sure. So a lot has been said about this, harmonization of taxes, tariffs, as he said, revenue authority agencies have to be, speaking the same language, but some people have to sit down together and have a position that is properly put to a secretariat, and therefore we get to measure what we are doing on the continent. So ladies and gentlemen, dear panelists, I urge the public sector, governments, to push us ultimately. Because anyway, when we trade well, you earn well. When we trade well, the taxes of the civil servants is possibly going to increase. When we do better, the public sector does better. Push us. Push us, push us, push us. Do not entertain anymore the lobbying that we do individually, as Minister Mohammed alluded to. We know that some of these barriers have come from the private sector, but a lot more barriers have come from the government sector. I don't want to go into this. There are several barriers created by revenue authorities, barriers created by security agencies, barriers created, all sorts of barriers as we have encountered. But fortunately, in East Africa, we have done so much in identification of the barriers, presenting them properly in coordinated forums, and this is what we need to do as we get into the operationalization of the AFTA. Thank you.
A passionate plea by a member of the private sector. I know we are sitting between you and lunch, and there's a bit of business to do here as well. But as a parting shot, I'd just like to take the example of the women and the men who trade at borders. These people have been very successful in trading amongst themselves, despite the fact that there was a border in between them. With recent developments, there's a lot more trading across those borders. Could we expand that into the way we work between the different countries. These are people who live their day-to-day lives, they're good friends, they see opportunities across from each other, and yet we are the ones, as governments, as whatever came through, that put the barrier there to stop them from trading across the borders. That's a great model and opportunity to see. The second thing that I just like to leave as a thought is that a lot of the big infrastructure projects in East Africa are still being done on the basis of trading out of Africa. We are developing the Northern Corridor, we are developing the Central Corridor. All these are based on the old routes for import and export of commodities and raw materials out of Africa and bringing in materials into Africa. Could we be champions of having infrastructure being built for us to trade with each other? Instead of going east-west, which was a colonial infrastructure route, we start going north-south and northeast to southwest, and those kind of directions, so that we actually created a much easier opportunity for us to be able to trade amongst each other. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give our panel a big hand as we now move on to the next section. Laban Cliff, my fellow moderator, is coming up. He is now going to show us what to do next, and I'm sure some of the panelists here are going to take part in that next session. Laban Cliff, do I release them or do I leave them up here? I leave them up here. Thank you. Sorry for making you sit and stand for so long, but it's one time in a very short while, in a long time. This is a short time that you have with you, so we make you work for your lunch and for your dinner. Thank you very much, Laban Cliff.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it. It should also be on the panel. You don't want to miss out on cake, you know. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all please give a round of applause, please, to our power panel, as you call, and to thank them very much for the work that they're doing. Mine is very simple. It's really to celebrate. I'm going to ask the ushers to please make their way to the front to prepare for the cake cutting. That has been prepared to us by the Sarover Stanley. Allow me now to just, before we get into the cake cutting session, I'm told we have some awards to really thank the government on behalf of the private sector, really from the private sector to government for the work that, of course, the regional countries are doing in ensuring that we actually all meet up. I'm going to ask Angelica to please stand and perhaps arrange the awards in this order. First of all, Angelica will present the awards to Madam Lillian Awinja, who will later present to our chairman, that's Mr. Kabeho. Jim, you're going to be presenting these awards. First, we're going to start with the East African community. That's to Honorable Ambassador Dr. Liberat Fumukeko. We're going to present to you an award, sir, for the work you're doing from policy level at the community. So Jim is going to come up and submit a photo session here. All right, so the first award goes out to the East African community, and to receive this award, presented by our chairman, will be Honorable Ambassador Fumukeko to take up this, and to our appreciation from the East African Business Council, even as we celebrate 20 years. Okay. To receive the award on behalf of President Uhuru Kenyatta, of course, being represented here ably by his cabinet secretary, that's Aidan Mohammed. Jim will also present award to, of course, forward to the president. Aidan Mohammed, this is also to you and your boss for the good work you're doing to progress on integration efforts in the region and supporting the private sector. Let's give a round of applause, please. All right, camera ops and photo ops. Kodak moments, as I'm told. Shukran, Sante. Last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, to receive the award on behalf of His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, please help me welcome, of course, in his capacity also as the head of state of the summit, we're also going to have, of course, Ambassador Rugunda to please come up. Prime Minister, Right Honorable, to please receive the award on behalf of His Excellency Yoweri Museveni. Thank you so much, Prime Minister, and thank you very much. allow me to welcome you for cake.
Next, we will cut the cake for the 20 years, Eabc 20th anniversary. We would like the whole high table, including the Right Honorable Dr. Kirunda Kivejinja and the Minister for EAC Affairs, Honorable Munya, to join the guest of honor and the team here to cut the cake.
Ladies and gentlemen, please let's give a round of applause and appreciation to the East African Business Council for celebrating 20 years. 20 years. All right. My colleagues in the press, I believe you're... Thank you very much. Thank you, my colleagues in the press.